Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Night Live. I'm excited to be back after a wild week at the ISTE conference in Denver, Colorado. And then right after that, I went straight to Lubbock, Texas to spend a day with educators there, some CTE and then some that were just K-12. And it was a great time. But I'm really excited because tonight I have a special co-host that's going to join me in this conversation about binge watching reality game shows. And drum roll, let's see who it is. It is Dave Burgess,
Hi,
author
Tisha. How
of
are you doing?
Teach Like a Pirate. Good. So glad to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for inviting me to pop on with you.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics because I love getting to just find ways to bring just different things into the classroom, especially when it comes to games. And, you know how much I love getting games and finding ways to bring them into learning. I was with you in Portland when we were at Powell's bookstore and I found that Blots game.
That's
So
right.
not surprising that I go into like the largest bookstore probably in North America and I come out with not a book, but a
Yes,
game. Makes perfect sense.
it makes complete sense. Yeah, I remember you like your eyes were gravitating over to the game section and headed that way. Well, we gotta find where those games. There's another place where there's more games, and I'm like, yeah, there's 40 million books in there. But nope,
Yeah,
you left with a game.
I left at the game. I think my green screen is turning my teeth blue. When you notice my blue teeth, I might have
Oh
to
yeah,
take my green screen off. It's kind of funny, but that's just I don't know. I don't like that. I might have to take that off. I don't even know how actually. So you just might be looking at blue teeth tonight. It's so strange. But yeah, thanks for joining in, and we're just going to get right to it because Dave, you know that in my classroom I gamified all of my classes. I taught culinary arts, and I had 3 different levels of culinary. I taught culinary 2, and then I taught regional cuisine and international cuisine, and I gamified every one of those classes with a theme that was layered over the curriculum. Are you laughing? I can tell you wanting to laugh. I know. Maybe if I move back a little bit, it'll go away. I'm not
it's
sure.
like did you before you started? Did you eat a Smurf?
It does look like that. So funny. Yeah, I might have to go into my settings and take that off, but you can just laugh at me. It's fine. But I layered this kind of theme over all of my classes, and each one was different, and each one was inspired by reality game shows. And there are so many. There are so many game shows out there. I'm glad that I can add humor, Dave.
You're
Oh my
welcome.
gosh,
Okay.
Teresa. Hello there. Oh, look at I have Ryan, Cheryl, and Teresa joining in. Thank you so much. Makes my heart so happy. And yeah, someone's gonna have to screenshot these blue teeth. It's hilarious. Why don't you? I guess it's because of my blue background. It's just bleeding into the white teeth. It's so funny. Um, What did you say, Ryan? Behold, crest Tisha will make you blue. I love it. So funny. But in my book, Make Learning Magical, I talk about in my the G in magical stands for gamified experiences. I talk all about how I gamified my classes according to these different game inspired themes. So I thought it would be fun tonight to talk about binge watching reality game shows because summer's the perfect time because you have this time to be able to just sit in front of the TV and binge watch an entire season if you want to. And it's okay because you deserve to sit in front of the TV and binge watch. And it's a great way to not only have fun, just kind of, watching shows that maybe you don't normally get to see, but also you can find some inspiration there for the year ahead.
Absolutely. One of the things I talk about is having a how can I use that mindset? And that's
Yeah.
this is a perfect example of that. It's like where you just, whatever you're doing, you should constantly, as an educator, be asking like, like, how could I use that in my classroom? And so we know that reality TV is so popular and people enjoy watching it. It gets great viewership. So what is it about these shows that are drawing people in? Are these any of these elements that I can bring into my classroom, which is what you're so good at? And so, yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So I thought I would start by just kind of walking you all through one of my themes that I used in my classroom. And I had three. I had a Master Chef theme for Culinary 2. I had a great food truck theme for my regional United States, American cuisine. And then I had the Amazing Race theme for the international portion of my curriculum. And so I'm going to talk through the Amazing Race. And I love that you're here, Dave, because you have a social studies secondary background. And so you have that lens. And so I want to just share, like, though I'm talking about this from the lens of a culinary teacher, you can absolutely apply this kind of a theme over any content. It doesn't have to be culinary. It could be social studies. You could bring in math. You could bring in ELA. You could bring in lots of different areas. And it doesn't have to connect directly to your content. It's just this kind of game layer that you're overlaying over your curriculum to just engage kids in a new way and really kind of empower them in the learning process. So I'm going to, let's see which the best view here. Here we go. I'm going to give you a little peek into my gamified class where I layered this Amazing Race framework over my international cuisine class. And so first of all, I had the inspiration, and that was the Amazing Race show. The Amazing Race is one of those reality game shows that have been on for a really long time. So it may have been a while since you've watched a season, but as far as I know, it's still on. I know that there was a season last year. And so you have lots of seasons to binge watch if you want to be able to get those ideas for your classroom. But what I did was I took this theme and I created kind of a trailer, and this kicked off my season or my semester of culinary arts. And I'm going to show you the trailer that I created. So I created this trailer it was iMovie at the time, but now there's so many different platforms that you could create a movie trailer like that in. And now I would probably use I know I would use Canva just because it's so intuitive and it's so easy to use and just so visual. There's so many things that you can bring into it. But I loved using a trailer like this because it really hooked students from the very beginning. And I know, Dave, you love hooks. You want to talk a little bit about how this can be powerful to really draw your students in?
Yeah, no, it's so perfect. Like, I'll talk about preheating the grill, right? Like not putting steak down on cold grills, but preheating it. And so it sizzles. Like this has a lot of sizzle to it. Like imagine you're a student and you walk in and, in their other courses, they're reading through some boring syllabus and course rules and regulations. And you walk into this class and you get this as your opener and this trailer and like going like, this is what's going to be your semester right now that you're headed into. And if you think about how that contrasts with everything else that they're probably sitting through, like this, they're going to be super pumped. So I love it.
Yeah, no, it was always so fun to just watch the looks on their faces when I would show the trailer because they're like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" And you knew that they were intrigued and they got just a little glimpse of what was going to be coming in the semester, but they had so many questions. It really like piqued their curiosity in a really, really fun way. And so I love creating these. And I will tell you too that if you have students, maybe you're kind of thinking through, I don't know, students that you've had in your class before that might be your student aides, that kind of thing. You can always have them help you with these trailers too. I had one of my students create a trailer for my Master Chef theme, and it was fantastic because kids speak in the language of video. And so they love creating things like this. So if you have somebody in your life that could create the video for you as well, that's another way to just save you a little bit of time. So let's kind of move on and talk about the framework of this class. So again, this class was a semester long. And essentially, my classroom transformed into restaurants in various parts of the world as we were traveling around the globe as a class experiencing international cuisine. So we were going all over. And my content, my curriculum was broken into units of study that were different continents or different parts of the world. So every unit was kind of another part of the world that we were visiting. But again, it doesn't have to be that way for you if you teach a different subject area. You could travel to different parts of the world each unit of study, and the curriculum does not have to connect even to that part of the world. You could tie in some things, but like if let's say you were teaching math, maybe you'd tie in some elements that would be from that country, but you're still teaching the same math that you would always teach in that unit, right? And I'm thinking too about social studies. Dave, what would this look like for you if you were bringing this into your social studies class?
Yeah, well, I mean, so if it was a geographical based class, it could just as easily be broken into regions like this, like you study different parts of the world, different cultures and all that. So that is very social studies related. But as a history teacher, this could be historical events, that you're traveling through. Like you might have your Revolutionary War stop and your Civil War stop and World War I and II and like all the different things. You have your civil rights movement. All your existing units that you have to study in the course of like a U.S. history course or a world history course could be stops along the way that they're going to be taking their team through.
Yeah, I love that. I think it would fit really, really well with history and just social studies in general. But you're right. I think any content area, this could absolutely work. Elementary school too. You could tie this into an elementary classroom as well, and maybe you hit a different part of the world every month. Maybe and in that month, everything that you're doing is kind of somehow connected in a way to that part of the world. So really kind of fun to think about what that could look like. And then you have characters in this Amazing Race game too. And so in my class, my students would be the characters, right? They would be the teams that were embarking on this adventure around the world. In the actual Amazing Race game, the characters are in teams of 2, right? In my class, they were teams of 4 or 5 because that was the way that my students were grouped. And so it just made sense that each team was a team of 4 or 5 because those were my kitchen groups. In another class, pairs might work better, and you want your students to be traveling in pairs. Or maybe they are all doing this individually. That could work too. There's no right or wrong. Again, we're using this game as inspiration, but the way that it actually plays out in your class is up to you and what would make most sense to you. What do you think you would do, Dave, if you were bringing this into a class? Would you do teams? Would you do individual pairs?
I think I would lean towards pairs probably.
Yeah, I think pairs could work really well, and especially because that's the way the game is made up. But in addition to the characters or the students that are in this game, there are also other characters involved. So every unit, we would bring in guest judges that would come in and students would demonstrate their learning in front of them. And so they became characters in the game. I would be the game show host, right? Like I am the one that's kind of initiating the challenges and kind of overseeing this game as we're moving across the US. So you can bring in lots of different people. You might have people in different parts of the world that you want to zoom in on a Zoom call. It's just like a guest speaker, or people in your community that you want to come in and be a guest speaker. I mean, there's lots of players and characters that could come into this kind of game structure. Do you have when in your class, did you ever have people come in, Dave, or what would your
Yeah,
guess?
so as we got to things that were in more recent history, sometimes we would have people come in. I also had people come in that were, there was a couple teachers on campus who were reenactors, so like when we did our civil, there was Mr. Sutton. Mr. Sutton was a Civil War reenactor. And so during that time, I would invite him to come in. He would come in full dress and, do this incredible presentation for the kids as if he was an actual Civil War soldier. It looked like it, had all the stuff, and passed out the little mini ball bullets, and like it was a full-on routine. He also used to do a thing where he would set up like a D-Day presentation out in the pit and have all like the obstacles that they had to go through and stuff, and super cool stuff.
That's so fun. And that brings in the costume hook, right? Like you could definitely do that. And I didn't leverage the costume hook enough in my class. That would have been really fun. Like if I came in with like lederhosen on or something in Germany, or like there's so many fun things that you could do to bring in that. Or, as we talk about setting, there's so many ways that you could kind of transform your space to have different types of elements that are connected to that part, of the world also. There's just endless possibilities there. But then oh yeah, go ahead.
So you can do that outside too. Like we used to do a Trail of Tears presentation, but it was entirely outside. And so, but what I would do is it went out through the dirt over parking lot, around the baseball field, out through the PE field, out, there's a full period walk. And at various places along the walk, I had set stuff up. I had buried some things out there. I had stuff, like things that we would discover, like would come around this bush, and all of a sudden there'd be little things set up on the ground for us to talk about and look at. And so, it was something that it was a super fun class over a very serious subject, but yet it was engaging because, we got to just get out there and explore, put on our explorer hats kind of, and go out there. And so you can don't be limited by your four walls of your classroom. Maybe there's some other space on campus where you could do it, where you need bigger areas, bigger space. I would just set it up ahead of time. Like, hey, this is where this is going to be. I tell the PE teachers, like, do you have anything going on where I can, can I use this space, and just let everyone know and get outside of your classroom with these things.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great idea, because sometimes we think, oh, that our classroom's so small, or we just, we have different limitations with that. But yeah, you absolutely could go outside of your classroom, and you just have so many more possibilities because of the additional space that you have. I love, Teresa says this would also be good for the Westward Expansion Oregon Trail Unit in elementary. Absolutely. And it is Teresa's birthday. So happy birthday, Teresa. How cool that you're jumping into this on your birthday.
Happy birthday.
I hope you've had a really, really great day. So amazing. So when I think about the action for this particular game, it would come in the form of things like detours and roadblocks and fast forwards. And then the pit stop would be at the end of the unit. And so, of course, these are actual challenges that would happen in the Amazing Race. And that is where you can really get a lot of great inspiration, because as you see these reality game shows play out and you see them engage in challenges, of course, you would not be doing those exact same challenges in your classroom. However, it will give you ideas, and you might think of, within a particular unit, something that you would typically do, and how could you shift that activity or that assignment or that worksheet even, and bring in some type of an action challenge, where they are learning the same content, but they're doing it in a more engaging and more challenge-like way. Maybe you bring in the element of time, or maybe you bring in the element of chance. I mean, there's lots of things that you could do here. I had one of my actions was it was a sight or smell. So they had to, as a team, determine if they were going to use sight or smell. They didn't know what it was going to be, but if they chose sight, they would have to try to identify these herbs and spices by just seeing them. And if they chose smell, then they would have to be, they were, were not able to look, and they would have to identify by just smelling them. So things like that are kind of similar types of challenges from the game show, but brought in to really connect with the content that you're teaching. And it's so much fun to be able to do this because I would have something on the screen as students were coming in the room, and I would have music, right? I know music is another hook and Teach Like a Pirate. And they would know that that day something different was going to happen, that an action was going to happen, because they heard the music and they saw kind of the symbol up on the screen. So fun to be able to do that. All right. So talk about how this would kind of play out at the beginning. To start the game, sometime within those first couple weeks, we would have a casting call. And so this was really, we called it a casting call, and it was kind of like this Amazing Race application, but it was really kind of them filling out a short little resume. And I would use this to select teams to launch the race. And so you can see here 3 employability areas of strength, areas of growth, specific skills they're strong in, why they would be a good team member. And they didn't know why they were doing this. But what I would do is I would print all of these out, and I would take off their names. I would number them. And then throughout those first 2 weeks, we had lots of team building challenges. Every day I would group students in different teams so that they'd really get to know each other. And because I had lots of mixes of grade levels, I had freshmen sometimes and seniors in the same class. And so getting to know each other in those first couple of weeks were even more important. And so when they would have these challenges, they would earn these mystery badges. And so a team that would come in first would all get a mystery badge. Each individual would get the mystery badge, and there'd be a number underneath this scratch off sticker, and they were not allowed to scratch it off. They had to hold on to these cards until the end of the unit, or at the end of that kind of first 2-week game launch. And then on that last day, I would give them all pennies, and they would scratch off these scratch off stickers, and they would all have a point total based on how many cards they earned and what numbers were under those scratch off stickers. And so they became my team leaders. The top 8 card holders or point holders would be the team leaders, and I would lay out all of those resumes without the names on them, or those casting call applications. And one by one, the top 8 team point holders would look at all the resumes and pick out their top team pick. And then the next person would pick theirs, and the next. We'd keep going around until all the teams were selected. And that way, they didn't know who they were selecting, but they could tell based on the applications who they wanted on their team. And we talked beforehand about what makes a good team. Like, we don't want all the same skill sets on a team. We want different skill sets. We want different strengths. And so I remember the first time I did this, I was so worried because I thought, oh my gosh, this could really fail miserably. But it actually was the best way that I'd ever selected teams, because students were really putting a lot of thought into what would make a good team. Of course, there are times where you might have some type of a conflict and you have to do a little bit of shuffling, but I would tell you 9 times out of 10, it worked beautifully. So it was a really great way to be able to do that.
Yeah, I like that element of leaving the names off so you don't get into a situation where everyone's just trying to pick their friends or who they want
Yeah,
to work with, or kids feel left out. Like, this is reminded me of elementary school when I was picked last on every team. Like all that, you're kind of avoiding all that kind of triggering stuff.
for sure. And then those kids that were like, they didn't put any effort into it. They're like, oh man,
Yeah.
that was bad move on my part, that I didn't put a little bit more thought into this casting call that I did. So when so after we kind of do that, teams are picked, all of that, when we launch our first unit, meaning we're going to our first country or part of the world, I give them clues, and I might give them an envelope. And in that envelope are a series of clues. And the teams all have to try to figure out where we're going in the world next. They don't know what unit we're heading into. And so they have these clues, they're trying to figure it out. And the team that can point exactly on the globe where we are going, the exact location, so exact city and country, they get the number one, like first place pit stop. Whoever guesses it second gets second. And so all of these pit stops are handed out to them in the order that they're coming in. So just like in the game, The Amazing Race, right? They're all trying to get to the pit stop first. And so they are getting awarded for getting there first. And what happens is the teams that get there first get first choice in the country that they're researching for that unit that we're heading into. So if they got first place, they could decide any of these countries to research, or they could choose the wild and pick a country that's not represented here from that part of the world. And I liked adding the wild because sometimes students would choose a country that's not represented. And sometimes they would like afterwards, they might go, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't have picked this because it's a little harder, like not as much information on that particular country. But they loved having that option to be able to select. And then the second team would have second choice and so on until all of the countries were selected. And so for that unit of study, they would be researching, like doing a deep dive research of that country. And at the end of the unit, when we had our pit stop, it's kind of like an authentic assessment where they're demonstrating what they know. And they have to produce like some type of a dish connected to that country. I would bring in an authentic audience of judges, and they would get to shine in front of this judging panel of, sometimes there were people in the school, could be front office staff, teachers, custodians, might be people from the district office. It might be food truck owners or restaurant owners in the area. And I loved being able to do that because students were able to shine in front of people that they normally don't get a chance to shine in front of. And sometimes those kids might really struggle in math, but there's a math teacher there that gets to see them shine in culinary arts, right? Or maybe they're getting that authentic feedback from somebody in the industry who can really say, you know what, this is a great dish. Here's a tip that if it was rush hour and you were making this, it would make, the assembly line go so much smoother. And so a lot of really, really positive things about bringing in that authentic audience. Here's just a couple examples of the different kinds of challenges that you can do. But another thing that I would do is I would bring in these route markers, and this symbol would be hidden in various places. So it might be hidden in actual physical places within my classroom. They could be hidden in maybe books in the library. They might be hidden in digital activities and digital things that were in their learning management system. And if they found these route markers, it would give them these clues that would lead to secret challenges that they could take part in. So again, kind of piquing that curiosity and just giving things for them to look out for, and to maybe, take their advance their team in the race, which is super fun. And they might not find them at all. Like some units, maybe teams don't find any, but they're always on the lookout. They're always paying attention. And then another thing I'd love to do is add in these items. And so they could earn these items in a variety of ways. Maybe you did a digital quizzes or Kahoot game in your class, and maybe the team came in first. They might all get items. Or maybe a team just had great employability skills or had the cleanest kitchen that day. They might be able to get an item. It's always the things that students are always begging for, and putting them in card form and allowing them to draw them randomly at times that you choose. And different groups or different ages of kids and different content areas are going to have different things that they love. In my class, because it was culinary, students always wanted like extra ingredients, right? They wanted more cheese or more chocolate chips, those kinds of things. They
Don't we
love,
all?
yeah, right? Who doesn't love more cheese and more chocolate chips? But like, what would be one thing, Dave, can you think of in your class that kids are always wanting, or like something you'd want to put on an item?
Well, I was thinking I don't know if this is goes exactly in this category or not, but I was thinking as like you go through history over the course of the year and you're getting further along in history, that like transportation changes and gets faster. Like you could get like kind of speed up things. Like all of a sudden, like you have the train, like you're
Yeah,
able to go because you're in the 1800s and the trains or the car, and then eventually the plane. And you get to like 1969, you get the rocket card because we're going to the moon. Like so, you have these abilities to like move faster than everybody else as like history changed and got. So I think there might be some ways to add some elements in like that would be kind of fun.
that's brilliant. I love that idea. I even love that idea for this game. I mean, thinking about, there's different ways to get from one location to another. And so if they get like allowing like giving them the plane rather than the car is going to um get them there quick. I think that there's a lot of ways that you can use that. That's really cool. I
Yeah,
love
like
that
maybe
idea.
you see like you start the semester on horseback, everyone's on horseback like
Yeah,
this, and then all of a sudden someone gets like the train upgrade, and then like and you could see like what an advantage that would be.
that is so fun. That's a brilliant idea. I love it. So this is kind of what it would look like when I had a pit stop challenge. Again, like people from the community, people from the school would be coming in. I would send out an email just with a Google form saying, this is the date that my students are going to be at the pit stop. We'd love for you to join us, you know, respond, click on the time and day that you're able to come. And I would always have at least 6 to 8 people that were there for students to shine in front of. And I would give them a rubric with criteria. And so they could give feedback on that, but then they also could give like a point score on each criteria. And that was actually how my students were graded for that, was they would get all these scores back. The teams that got the highest scores would advance in the race, but they would all sit around the day after a challenge and they would look at their criteria. They would look at their criteria sheets and all the feedback, and they would determine based on the feedback what um, grade they felt like they should receive. And so I had students basically assess their own grade based on the feedback and the scores that they got. And then I would have a conversation with them and determine if I felt like that was a fair, grade based on what I saw and what the feedback was from the judges. So it was really, really effective. And again, students just really, they shine more when they're not just demonstrating their learning in front of you, when you bring in people outside, and the growth over time is pretty astounding too, just to see how much more articulate they became over time, how much more confident, how much more they were working together as a team during those pit stop challenges. It's really, really pretty powerful. And sometimes students could earn these upgrades too, where they might get, for those dishes that they were creating on a pit stop challenge, they might get an upgrade in dairy. So maybe they could use like whipping cream rather than milk, or they could use butter instead of margarine, or they could use steak instead of ground beef, those kinds of things. And so finding those ways that students can upgrade and, upgrade their experience in the game was pretty fun too. I love Teresa. Oh, Teresa says we have a Canterbury Tales unit in literature, and this would be a fun twist. Absolutely.
I love it.
So cool.
Tisha, I think it's worth noting that like if someone's watching and they're feeling like overwhelmed, this doesn't
Mhm.
have to be a full semester thing or a full year thing. Like this could be a couple days. You could do a couple days, like a little side quest thing as part of the rest of your curriculum. You might don't have to buy into a whole semester program to do this, or a week of your class could be an amazing race activity. That give it a try that way. If you're not ready to buy into the whole thing yet, give it a try for like a week and see how kids respond to it.
100%. In fact, when I started doing this kind of a thing, I did it at the very last unit of a year, and
Mm-hmm.
I just tried it, and there was things that I weren't perfect, but I saw the way that my students were responding to it, and I knew that I was onto something. Like I wanted to continue refining what I was doing because I could tell that there was a dynamic happening that hadn't happened in my class up to that point. And so I just kept refining and kept adding. And I did this with a singleton class at first. It was a couple semesters before I brought it, I expanded it beyond that one singleton class. So you can absolutely start small and build over time. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, Dave.
When I think about some of the things of gamification that I did in my class, it was more often along the lines of like a 1-day review activity. Like the day before the test, as a review, we would play class battleship or trench warfare or whatever. So it was only a 1-day activity, but it was layering in some of these kind of ideas and concepts. So it's kind of a low starting point.
Absolutely. And too, when I talk about this Amazing Race structure, it doesn't mean that there was an overlying game theme that was overlaid over the semester, but that doesn't mean every day was a challenge. I mean, there were days that were just like you would normally teach that class, but then you would bring in these elements that would be tied into that game. So don't think that every single, like, you're still teaching the same content, you're still teaching the same standards, you're just kind of overlaying this theme over it to engage students in a new way and in a cohesive way as well. So I want to encourage you all just to binge watch some television and start watching these reality game shows from this learning lens. And I have put together this kind of digital notebook for you of note-taking sheets that you can use. So if you want to sketch note it, you can sketch note it. If you want to, if you use Canva to do this, you can even use the text boxes and just type it in. But there is a bit.ly link right here. And so it's binge watching RGS notebook is the bit.ly link, and there's a QR code there as well. But and I'll go back here in a second if you haven't been able to record that yet. But in this notebook, I have lots of pages where you can maybe write in the episode overview. You can kind of talk about what the setting is in that particular show, who the characters are, and what those characters might be in your class, kind of the game objective, the content connection. How could this somehow connect to the content that you're teaching? And then areas for ideas. And then I just gave you some blank pages too. So you can add your own thoughts, ideas, aha moments in these pages. And this link is going to take you to Canva, but you absolutely could print this out if you just want to print it out and write down, and draw and doodle these notes. You could do that. Or in Canva, there is a draw tool. And so here's a picture of my iPad. You can see this draw tool over on the right-hand side. So you could actually digitally draw right within Canva if you wanted to. If I have Canva open on my iPad, I could just use my stylus and just write directly on that. So that's an option too. But if you're not into digitally sketchnoting, just print all of this out and do it that way. I love to sketchnote just by hand as well. So I'm excited to see what you guys are all thinking about as you watch some shows this summer. There are so many out there. I mean, I just watched The Final Table last night, and it's a really cool cooking show with these like top chefs from around the world. And there's just infinite amounts of game shows out there that, again, kind of cover different type of skill areas, but don't get limited by that. Just because it's a cooking show or a fashion show, don't think that couldn't be layered over your class, because you'll be able to think of ways that structure, it might not be the content, but the structure of that game could work and be layered over your curriculum.
Super awesome of you to create the resource for them. That's very cool.
I hope it helps. And I'm going to go back here for just a moment, and I will put that in the notes afterwards too. Know that that bit.ly is case sensitive. So you just have to make sure all the capital letters are in there. But I just wanted to be able to give you something to have fun, just watching and copying those ideas down. And I also want to let you know that I have put together a workshop for you that is virtual that it is open and ready to sign up for. And so you'll see a bit.ly link at the bottom there, and there's a QR code. This particular workshop is geared towards family and consumer science. However, I do feel like if you are not family and consumer science, you would still benefit from it. I think it will connect to any grade level and subject area. But there's going to be 4 live 1-hour interactive episodes starting in August. We are going to have brainstorming Q&A sessions. You will get tons and tons of resources that I have curated for you and game plans. And we will have a private Facebook group too. So lots of advantages of taking part in this course if you really want to like just dive in and have a gamified classroom ready to go when you hit back to school this fall. This might be a great thing for you to jump into, and let me help you. Let me help you put that game together.
I think that's a no-brainer to be able to like jump in there and not only be able to, it's like having a little personal session with you 4 times, but then also maybe like the whole community. I mean, other people will be probably sharing the ideas and things that they're coming up with too in there, and you have like a whole little support group to get you over the hump of getting started with this stuff. So that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted it to be interactive. I mean, the episodes will be interactive. You will be able to ask questions. It's going to be, I'd love for the idea sharing to happen. And then those Q&A brainstorming sessions are for that as well. Like really being able to process what you're learning and be able to have this community of people to share back and forth with. And again, like those resources are going to be extensive. I've created lots of game plans, lots of resources for every game plan. So you could take them and really customize them exactly the way that you want them for your specific class. So I'm super excited about it, and I hope you are too. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to ask me, and I'm happy to share more. But I also am available for keynotes, workshops, consulting, read alouds with my son, Tommy, if you want us to read aloud Dragon Smart in your classroom this next year or your library. And if you scan that QR code or use that bit.ly link, it will show you all the options, and you can fill out a form, and I'll get back to you, and we'd be happy to chat through some possibilities there as well. And there is this amazing creativity, collaboration, and curiosity in CTE course that I created through DBC Inc., which Dave, I'm sure most of you know, is the what do you call it? You're the CEO.
President, CEO, whatever.
President, yes, of DBC Inc. And so really happy to have put together this course that will give you lots and lots of ideas as well. I've got a couple new, well, they're not new. I have a couple new episodes on the Make Learning Magical podcast. The podcast has been around a while, but you definitely want to check that out, because just in the last couple months, I've added a few more to that collection. And I also have a podcast with Elizabeth Bostwick called Spark Joy and EDU, and Dave has been a guest on both of those. So you'll definitely want to search for those episodes and listen in. And yeah, I would love to connect with you. So if I can answer questions, support you, I'm here for you. I would love to be able to help you bring gamification or some type of a reality-based theme to your classroom next year. And I get so excited about talking about this kind of stuff. I've gone way longer today. So thanks, Dave, so much for jumping in and joining me for this conversation. And thanks to everybody who joined in. Thank you so much for being here. It's always great when we have people joining the conversation.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, Tish.
Of course. Good night, everyone.